There is something happening inside you right now that you cannot feel. It has no pain attached to it, no warning signal that fires when it begins, no alarm, no sensation, no moment of crisis that announces its arrival. It does not announce itself at all. It simply begins, quietly, patiently, with a kind of extraordinary, almost elegant restraint. And it works so slowly, so incrementally, so carefully calibrated to stay beneath the threshold of your awareness, that by the time most people sense something is wrong, the process has already been running for years, not weeks, not months, years. You are standing in the middle of your life right now, and from the outside, everything looks completely fine. You have a routine. You have comfort. You have enough. But somewhere beneath the surface of that comfort, beneath the familiar warmth of days that feel safe and predictable, something essential has been growing quieter. Something that used to burn has been losing its height. And the silence where that burning used to be has become so familiar that most people have stopped noticing it is there. That silence has a name. It is called the Extinction Spiral, and it is one of the most sophisticated psychological processes your own brain has ever constructed against you. Here is the first thing you need to understand about it. It does not arrive as your enemy. It arrives as your caretaker. It arrives in the voice of rest, of wisdom, of self-preservation. It speaks gently, and it speaks often, and it speaks with the vocabulary of someone who genuinely has your best interests at heart. And that is precisely what makes it so difficult to resist, because you are not fighting something that feels wrong. You are fighting something that feels completely, entirely, undeniably right. Your brain is not your ally in the way most people believe it to be. It is your survival machine. Its primary function, the one it has been executing since long before you were conscious, is to keep you alive with the minimum expenditure of energy. And ambition, real ambition, the kind that demands uncertainty and discomfort and risk and the sustained effort of building something against resistance, is metabolically expensive. It requires enormous cognitive output. It generates anxiety. It demands that you repeatedly enter situations where failure is a genuine possibility. And your brain, running its ancient calculations on your modern dreams, registers all of that as a threat. Not a threat to your potential, a threat to your safety. And so it begins, quietly, with a single reasonable decision to pause, to rest, to wait one more day before starting. The avoidance response fires, relief follows. The brain records a data point. Avoidance equals safety. Safety equals survival. The circuit deepens, and the next time ambition appears at the door of your attention, the avoidance response fires a little faster, dressed in slightly better language than before. This is where it starts. Not with failure, not with catastrophe, with a nap, with a pause, with a very reasonable, very intelligent, very human decision to give yourself one more day. One more day, and then another, and then several more, and then a year, and then the years blur together, and the pause becomes permanent, and the pause becomes your life, and the life becomes the spiral, and the spiral becomes invisible, because it has been there so long it simply feels like you. That is the genius of what is happening. Not that it destroys you, that it makes you comfortable while it works, that it gives you enough satisfaction to prevent the suffering that would otherwise demand change, that it keeps you precisely perfectly, permanently comfortable enough to stay exactly where you are, while the version of yourself you were supposed to become waits somewhere in the dark, beyond the edges of your routine. The spiral did not begin the day you stopped trying. It began the day you rested, and it felt so good that you rested again, and again, and again, until the resting became the default, until the hunger that used to pull you towards something became so quiet you could no longer locate it, until you started to believe that this was peace, that this was growth, that this was what a mature adult who had learned real wisdom looked like. But here is the truth. And this is the truth the spiral has been protecting you from. The quiet you are living in is not the quiet of wisdom. It is the quiet of extinguishment. And extinguishment is not the same as peace. It feels like peace from the inside. But from the outside, if you could step far enough away to see yourself clearly, you would see a person who has been slowly, systematically, silently replaced by a smaller and safer version of themselves. And the replacement was so gradual and so gentle that neither you nor anyone around you ever thought to sound the alarm. This is the silence before the disappearance. This is where every extinction spiral begins. And understanding this moment, sitting with its weight, letting it reach the parts of you that have been insulated from it, is the only way to begin to see what has been happening and what it has cost you. Let us go back further. Let us trace the spiral to its source. Because every person who finds themselves caught in the extinction spiral can look back, if they are honest enough, and find the ordinary moment where it began. Not a dramatic moment, not a crisis, an ordinary one, a Tuesday afternoon, a missed deadline that got pushed to next week, a project that seemed slightly too large for the energy available that day, a dream that felt slightly more distant than the effort required to reach it. A pause. The pause felt reasonable. It was reasonable. This is the part that must be understood clearly. The beginning of the extinction spiral is not an error in judgment. It is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is a completely sensible response to the genuine demands of an overwhelming world. Of course, you needed to rest. Of course, the timing was sometimes wrong. Of course, there were real obstacles and real limitations and real reasons why today was not the perfect day to begin. But here is what was happening beneath the surface of the rest. Your brain was learning. Every single time you stepped back from something difficult, every time the discomfort of ambition appeared and you chose the relief of avoidance, your brain filed a report. The report said, discomfort leads to withdrawal. Withdrawal leads to relief. Relief is safe. Safety is the goal. And the neural circuit that connects the stimulus of ambition to the response of avoidance deepened slightly. And the next time it fired slightly faster, with slightly less resistance, with slightly more convincing language. The language evolved. In the early stages of the spiral, the justifications are transparent enough that a part of you can see through them if you look carefully. I am just tired today. I will start tomorrow when I have more energy. The timing is not quite right yet. I need to prepare a little more before I commit. These thoughts feel reasonable because the brain is not yet skilled at concealing them. The avoidance is still recognizable as avoidance. But the brain is a learning machine, and it learns fast, and the more you accept the justifications, the more sophisticated they become. The language grows more complex. The reasoning grows more nuanced. The thoughts begin to sound not just reasonable, but genuinely wise. I have learned that forcing things never works. I have discovered that real progress comes from patience, not pressure. I have realized that my old drive was actually anxiety dressed as ambition. And now I am learning to trust the natural rhythm of things rather than forcing them. This is the avoidance circuit at its most advanced. This is what it sounds like when the spiral has had enough practice to speak fluently in the language of self-awareness and personal growth. You are no longer avoiding ambition. You are philosophically opposed to the kind of stress-driven achievement culture that was hurting you. You are choosing a gentler path. You are honoring your nervous system. You are being kind to yourself in ways your younger, more driven self never understood. And every word of it is a lie, not a cruel lie, not a lie told with malice or intention, a biological lie, a lie your survival system has constructed to protect the path of least resistance it has been building since the first pause. The language is borrowed from genuine wisdom, but it is being deployed not as truth, but as sedation. The circuit is now complete. Ambition appears. The avoidance response fires. The sophisticated language arrives to justify the response. Relief follows. The circuit deepens. And the next time the process runs, it is faster and smoother and more convincing than it was before. Until the avoidance is so automatic that you do not experience it as a choice at all. You simply do not feel motivated. You simply do not have the energy. You simply do not feel ready. The mechanism has become invisible because it has been running for long enough to feel like personality. That is the moment the spiral truly takes hold. Not when you stop trying. When you stop noticing that you have stopped trying. Because the hourglass is still running while you sit beside it looking the other way. The clock face may have no hands, but time is still passing. The treadmill is still moving, and you are still walking and going nowhere. And none of it feels urgent enough to change because the comfort is too present and the pain is too absent, and the design of the trap is precisely its painlessness. There is no alarm. There never was. The spiral was always going to be invisible until it was too late to be invisible anymore. And the only counter to invisibility is the willingness to look directly at something most people spend their entire lives carefully avoiding. The truth of what is happening. Not the comfortable version, the actual version. The one that has been running beneath your explanations and your philosophies and your very reasonable justifications for the very reasonable life you have been very reasonably settling into. That version is waiting for you. It has been waiting for a long time, and it is not comfortable. But nothing worth seeing ever is. The second phase of the extinction spiral is where it becomes truly dangerous. Because in the first phase, avoidance is at least recognizable as avoidance, however well disguised it might be in the moment. In the second phase, your brain does something far more sophisticated. Something that operates at a deeper level than behavior. Something that reaches into the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you value and what a good life looks like. It changes the story. Not dramatically, not all at once. Gradually, organically, over the course of months and years of accumulated avoidance, your brain begins a quiet and systematic reframing of your entire value system. It calibrates your desires away from growth and toward acceptance, away from ambition and toward contentment, away from the hunger that once defined you and toward a peaceful, well-reasoned appreciation for the life you already have, rather than the life you were building toward. And it does this so gradually, so in alignment with things you genuinely want to believe about yourself, that you do not experience it as a loss at all. You experience it as evolution, as arrival, as the natural outcome of a maturing mind that has learned to see beyond the ego-driven striving of its earlier years. You begin to hear new thoughts, thoughts that feel like they belong to someone older and wiser, thoughts that feel earned. People who are always chasing more are running from something. Real contentment comes from appreciating what is already here. I used to need external achievement to feel okay about myself. Now I have grown beyond that. I am present. I am at peace. I have let go of the need to prove anything to anyone, including myself. These are beautiful thoughts. Read them carefully, and you will find real wisdom in each of them. There are people who have genuinely arrived at these realizations through hard experience and honest reflection, and they are richer for it. Contentment is real. Presence is real. The liberation from ego-driven achievement is a genuine and valuable thing. But there is another version of these thoughts. The version your brain produces not through genuine evolution, but through the extinction spiral reaching your philosophy. The version that takes the vocabulary of spiritual maturity and deploys it as a sedative. The version that uses the language of enlightenment to describe the process of giving up. And the difference between these two versions is almost impossible to detect from inside the experience because they feel identical. The peace of genuine contentment and the numbness of extinguished ambition feel the same from the inside. The quiet of real wisdom and the quiet of a dying fire feel the same. They occupy the same emotional register. They produce the same sense of calm. And in the absence of external comparison or ruthlessly honest self-examination, they are indistinguishable. This is the reframing in its full sophistication. Your brain has taken the story of someone who stopped building and translated it into the story of someone who chose a different and superior way of living. And it has done this not to deceive you, but to protect you from the discomfort that the honest story would produce. The honest story would require action. The reframed story requires nothing except the continued appreciation of what you already have. And the reframing does not stop at your philosophy. It reaches your identity. It reaches the way you look at your former self. It reaches the way you compare yourself to people who are still building. And here is the cruelest part of this entire phase. As the reframing deepens, you begin to feel a subtle and genuine superiority over your own hunger, a kind of gentle condescension toward the version of yourself that once burned for something. You look back at the younger, hungrier you, and you see not someone who was alive and vital and moving toward meaning. You see someone who was restless, insecure, unable to be present, running from something they had not yet faced. You feel sorry for that person. You feel glad to have grown beyond them. But that person was not broken. That person was building. That person had fire. That person was reaching toward a version of themselves that did not yet exist. And that reaching was the most alive thing about them. It was not anxiety dressed as ambition. It was ambition. Real ambition. The thing that makes a human life something more than a comfortable passage between birth and death. You have not grown beyond them. You have grown away from them. And the distance between those two things is the distance between a life you are authoring and a life that is simply happening to you while you are comfortable enough not to notice the difference. The compass spins. The footprints disappear. The thought bubble shows the building that never gets built. The notebook stays blank. And the story that explains all of this sounds from the inside like wisdom, like growth, like the peace that only comes to those who have truly learned to let go. But you have not let go. You have been let go of. And there is a profound difference between releasing something and being released from it without your permission or awareness. There is a point in the extinction spiral where the damage moves beyond behavior and beyond thought patterns and beyond philosophy. A point where it reaches the deepest structure of psychological experience, the level of identity. The fundamental story a person tells themselves about who they are. And when the spiral reaches this level, it becomes most difficult to reverse. Because behavior can be changed with enough motivation. Thought patterns can be interrupted with enough awareness. But identity is the architecture everything else is built on. And once the spiral has restructured that architecture, you are no longer simply avoiding ambition. You no longer recognize yourself as someone who has it. Watch this carefully. Watch how it happens in real time. A person in their mid-20s carries a vision, something specific, something that means something to them at a cellular level, not a vague fantasy of wealth or recognition, but a genuine calling. The kind of thing that makes them feel most themselves when they are doing it. They begin building toward it, imperfectly, inconsistently, with the enormous energy and insufficient strategy of someone young and genuinely alive in their purpose. They hit obstacles. The obstacles feel larger than expected. The timeline extends. The gap between where they are and where they need to be feels discouraging in a way they had not fully prepared for. And the pause begins. They do not stop officially, not in their own mind. They tell themselves they are regrouping, recalibrating, waiting for a slightly better set of circumstances. They keep the intention alive. They speak about the goal in the present tense. They maintain the internal story of themselves as someone who is going to do this thing. But the behavior changes. The daily actions that were moving them toward the goal become weekly, then occasional, then absent. They are still the same person in their own mind, still carrying the same intention, still identifying as someone who is working toward something. But the work has stopped, and the intention has become something they carry rather than something they act on, a possession rather than a practice. Months pass, then a year, then several years, and slowly, imperceptibly, the identity begins to shift. Not through a conscious decision, not through a moment of surrender, through the accumulated weight of consistent behavior recorded by a brain that cannot tolerate permanent dissonance between who you believe yourself to be and how you consistently act. The brain resolves the conflict the only way it can. It rewrites the identity in the direction of the behavior. If you consistently avoid ambitious action, you must not be, at your core, an ambitious person. And if you are not an ambitious person, then perhaps the dream was never truly yours. Perhaps it belonged to a younger version of yourself who had not yet learned better. Perhaps your real self, your truer and more authentic self, is the one who is comfortable here, settled, at peace with what is rather than what could be. And so the replacement is complete. The identity of someone building something has been replaced by the identity of someone who has chosen a different kind of life. And the person wearing the new identity genuinely believes they chose it. Genuinely believes this is who they always were underneath the restlessness. Genuinely believes the spiral was the path to their authentic self, when in truth, it was the path away from it. Two figures stand side by side now, one solid and present, the other translucent and fading. Both are the same person, but only one is the real one, and the real one is not the comfortable, settled, quietly extinguished version. The real one is the one with the fire, the one who was building, the one the spiral has been working against since it first began. That version still exists. It has not been destroyed. It has been covered. And covered things can be uncovered. But only if you first acknowledge what the covering is. Only if you stop calling the covering growth and start calling it what it actually is. The slow, patient, biologically motivated replacement of who you were with who was easier to be. We need to stop here and look carefully at what the extinction spiral produces, because it is important to understand that it does not produce obvious failure. It does not produce collapse or crisis or the kind of visible suffering that generates urgency and demands response. It produces something far more insidious and far more difficult to escape. It produces a completely normal life, not a bad life, not a life of visible suffering or dramatic defeat, a completely, thoroughly, entirely normal life. And normal is the spiral's masterpiece, because normal does not inspire action. Normal does not create urgency. Normal feels like enough, and enough is the grave of extraordinary. Look at this life. Look at its shape. There is stability, regular income, a home with familiar objects in familiar places, a routine that provides enough structure to feel purposeful without requiring anything new to be risked or built. There are relationships, not necessarily deep ones, not the kind that require vulnerability or sustained emotional investment, but functional ones, comfortable ones. People who are pleasant to be around and who provide sufficient social connection to prevent the kind of isolation that would otherwise demand attention. There is contentment, not the rich earned contentment of someone who has built something and lived fully inside their own potential, but the pale, available contentment of someone who has learned not to want too much, who has calibrated their desires downward to match the life they are actually living rather than upward to match the life they were capable of building, who has found a way to be satisfied with less than they were made for by the simple method of forgetting they were made for more. And here is the thing about this life that makes it so dangerous. From the outside, it looks completely fine. There is nothing wrong visible to anyone looking in. There is no red flag, no crisis, no obvious wound. The person living it is kind and functional and pleasant to be around. They have stability and comfort and a reasonable degree of happiness. There is nothing to point at and say, "Look, that is suffering. That is a person who needs help." There is only the quiet, the persistent, almost imperceptible quiet, a muted quality to the engagement with their own existence, a slight distance between themselves and their experience, as though they are observing their life from a degree of remove rather than inhabiting it fully, as though they are present in the room but not quite inside the moment, as though a very thin layer of glass has been placed between them and the direct experience of being alive. They feel it occasionally, in the spaces between the routine. Late at night when the house is quiet and the entertainment is off, and there is nothing left to distract from the silence. Or early in the morning before the day begins, in unexpected flashes of recognition triggered by a song that reminds them of someone they used to be, or a conversation that accidentally touches something that has been covered for a long time. In those moments, something stirs. a ghost of the old hunger, a faint, almost painful awareness of the distance between the life they are living and the life that once seemed possible. They feel it. And then the routine begins again, and the entertainment starts, and the distraction arrives, and the moment passes, and they are fine. Fine is the word. Fine is always the word. Ask them how they are, and they will say fine. Ask them if they are happy, and they will pause for a moment, consider the question with the slight discomfort of someone who has not asked it of themselves in a while, and then say yes. Mostly I think so. I am doing fine. And fine is true. That is the worst part of it. They are not lying. They are genuinely, authentically, accurately fine. And fine is the most dangerous word in the vocabulary of a human life. Because fine means not broken, not in crisis, not in need of help. Fine means the compass stops spinning, but nothing changes. Fine means the cage door stays open, but the figure stays inside. Fine means the anchor holds, and the boat never leaves, and the years pass, and the life is fine. Not extraordinary, not fully alive, not what was possible, but fine. And fine is where the extinction spiral leaves you. Not destroyed, not defeated, just permanently, quietly, comfortably less than you were supposed to be. Surrounded by the comfortable objects of a comfortable life. Living inside the identity of someone who chose this. Carrying the story of a person who matured past their restlessness. Wearing the settled face of someone who found their peace. While somewhere inside them, so quiet now that they have almost stopped hearing it, the original hunger waits, patient, diminished, but not gone. Now we go deeper. Now we leave the psychological description and enter the biological mechanism. Because the extinction spiral is not only a story about behavior and identity, it is a story about the brain, about the specific neural hardware that was supposed to drive you toward your potential and how it was quietly, efficiently, and completely repurposed to keep you exactly where you are. Your brain runs on dopamine. Most people know this. What most people do not know is how dopamine actually works, and the misunderstanding of this single fact is responsible for more wasted human potential than almost any other error in self-knowledge. Dopamine is widely understood as the reward molecule, the substance released when you achieve something, when you finish the project, reach the goal, cross the finish line, the reward for completion. And if this were accurate, it would mean that the way to feel motivated is to achieve things, which would mean that people who achieve nothing are people who receive no dopamine reward and who therefore feel bad and who therefore seek to change their behavior, which would make the extinction spiral biologically impossible. But dopamine does not fire at achievement. It fires at anticipation, at the expectation of reward, at the imagining, the planning, the dreaming of what is coming. The dopamine release is not the reward for success. It is the biological drive toward it, the chemical that makes you lean forward, the substance that fires in your brain when you imagine the future and believe it is reachable. And this is the mechanism the extinction spiral hijacks. Because if dopamine fires at anticipation rather than achievement, then you can receive the full neurological reward of ambition without doing any of the work of ambition. You can imagine the finished book, and your brain rewards you. You can plan the business in your head, and your brain rewards you. You can see yourself in the future having built the thing, and the reward circuit fires just as reliably as it would if you had actually built it. The brain cannot fully distinguish between the vivid imagination of success and the actual experience of pursuing it. The anticipatory dopamine does not require reality. It requires only a convincing simulation of a future that feels possible. And most intelligent, ambitious people are extremely skilled at producing exactly that simulation. They are skilled dreamers, skilled planners, skilled visualizers of futures that feel real and near and achievable. And so the spiral finds a perfect weapon. Every time ambition calls and avoidance answers, the imagination steps forward as the compromise. You do not do the work, but you think about doing the work intensely, vividly, with the full engagement of your cognitive and emotional resources. You feel the future. You believe in it. You plan it in detail. You carry it in your mind like something precious. And your brain rewards you for it. Fully, reliably, every time. This is why people can spend years feeling motivated without ever acting. The dreaming has become the substitute for the doing. The planning has become the substitute for the building. The vision board and the journal and the long conversations with friends about what you are going to create one day are all producing dopamine, all feeding the reward circuit, all providing enough neurological satisfaction to reduce the urgency that would otherwise force action. The spiral has turned your own ambition into your sedative. It has taken the biological mechanism designed to propel you toward your potential and redirected it into a loop that produces the feeling of forward movement with none of the actual displacement. You feel like you are building something. You are building nothing. You feel like you are making progress. You are staying exactly still. But the chemistry is indistinguishable. The satisfaction is real. The dream is vivid. And the action never comes because the dream is already providing everything the action was supposed to provide. The cage door is open, but the figure inside does not leave because the imagination of leaving feels almost as good as leaving. The compass spins endlessly, but the spinning itself has become a kind of entertainment. The path exists, but the thought bubble above the head is more comfortable than the road beneath the feet. And the brain, doing exactly what it was designed to do, rewards you for every thought and punishes you for every effort. And the spiral tightens around a mechanism so deep and so biological that no amount of willpower applied at the surface level can reach it.
This is why the extinction spiral is not a character flaw. It is a design problem. The brain was not designed for the world you are living in. It was designed for a world where the imagination of safety was inseparable from actual safety, where dreaming about food was close enough to actually finding it, where the simulation and the reality were nearly the same thing. In that world, the spiral could not exist. In this world, where the imagined life can be made more vivid and more satisfying than the actual one with almost no effort, the spiral is almost inevitable unless you understand the mechanism, unless you can see the hijack for what it is, unless you can hold the understanding clearly enough and long enough to begin the interruption.
Let us make this concrete. Let us step completely out of abstraction and look at the specific lives where the extinction spiral has already done its work. Not invented lives, not illustrative fictions. The real patterns you recognize because you have lived alongside them, or because you are living one yourself. There is the writer. The one who filled 3 notebooks at 24 with the kind of writing that had something in it. Not perfect, not finished, but alive. With a specific voice, a specific heat. The unmistakable quality of someone who had found the thing they were made to do. They started the book. They had a concept. They had chapters in their head. They had the beginning of something real. Then life intervened, as it always does. A job that took more energy than expected. A relationship that required attention. A move. A loss. A reasonable and completely understandable series of circumstances that made the daily writing practice harder to sustain. They paused. They planned to return. They kept the document open on their computer as a daily reminder of the intention. They kept the fire symbolically alive. And they kept it open for 4 years without adding to it. They still think about the book, several times a week. They still identify as a writer. They still tell people they are working on something when the question comes up at parties. But the last new paragraph they wrote was in a different year than the one they are currently living in. The document is open. The book is not being written. The intention is present. The behavior is absent. And the gap between those two things has been growing for years, while they have been finding very reasonable reasons for it. Then there is the entrepreneur, the one with the idea that would not leave them alone, who could see it clearly, the problem it solved, the people it would help, the specific way it could work in the market, who started building it, who registered the business name, who told the people they trusted about it and felt the electric validation of people who believed in them, who hit the first real obstacle and pulled back, who told themselves they were being smart, strategic, patient, who researched extensively for months, who refined the vision continuously, who prepared comprehensively, who never shipped anything, who is now 5 years later on their fourth completely different business idea because none of the previous three felt quite right. None of them felt fully ready. None of them had the perfect timing. But here is what is actually happening. The ideas are fine. The preparation is thorough. The vision is genuine. The obstacle is the spiral. The restlessness that sends them searching for new ideas every year is not dissatisfaction with the ideas. It is the hunger trying to find a path around the avoidance that blocks every road it tries to take. And the hunger is getting quieter with each failed attempt. And one day it will stop suggesting new roads. And on that day, the spiral will be complete. Then there is the person with no single specific dream that was abandoned. The most common case of all. The one who at 22 or 23 had a quality of aliveness, a specific energy, a hunger for experience and growth and becoming, that was not attached to any single project, but was simply the condition of being alive and curious and reaching towards something larger than the current version of themselves. That quality. By 35, it is gone. Not dramatically. Without a funeral, without anyone noticing it left. The person cannot point to a dream that died. They cannot name the thing they were building that they stopped building. They just know that somewhere along the way, something essential went quiet. And the quiet became familiar. And then the quiet became normal. And then the quiet became who they are. These are not failures. These are not weak people or lazy people or people who lacked talent or deserved less. These are people who encountered the extinction spiral at the ordinary moments of a life, at the necessary pauses, the reasonable recalibrations, the understandable retreats from discomfort that accumulate into permanent stillness, who did not have the language or the awareness to recognize what was beginning at those ordinary moments when everything still felt fine. They are not exceptional cases. They are everywhere. They are in every social circle, every workplace, every family. They are the majority, not the exception, in a world that has been engineered to make the spiral easy and the alternative hard. And they might be you. Not all of them. Not exactly, but enough of them. In enough ways. To make this worth sitting with longer than is comfortable, we need to talk about the environment. Because the extinction spiral does not operate in isolation. It operates inside a world that has been engineered at almost every level of design and incentive to maximize its power over you. A world so comprehensively optimized for your comfort that the discomfort of ambition has been made not just unnecessary, but genuinely strange. The choice to grow through difficulty in a world that offers this much ease looks from the outside like a kind of voluntary self-punishment. The world you live in right now has eliminated friction at every point it could reach. The friction of boredom has been replaced by content streams calibrated by algorithm to give you exactly what you already enjoy, served in quantities sufficient to fill every gap in your attention. The friction of social isolation has been replaced by platforms that provide a continuous stream of social connection, requiring none of the vulnerability of genuine relationship. The friction of effort has been replaced by services that do for you what you once had to do yourself. The friction of delayed gratification has been replaced by credit that lets you feel like you have what you have not yet earned. Every moment of minor discomfort that might once have served as a signal has been systematically removed. Every small moment of friction that once punctuated the day with the reminder that life requires something from you has been smoothed away. And what has been left in its place is a seamless, frictionless, endlessly accommodating environment that provides the sensation of a full life while quietly eliminating the experiences that actually fill it. Because here is what comfort cannot give you, no matter how perfectly engineered it becomes. It cannot give you the specific, irreplaceable experience of having built something, of having endured difficulty in service of something that mattered and emerged on the other side having become more than you were before, of having surprised yourself with your own capacity, of having touched the ceiling of what you were previously capable of and broken through it, of having been genuinely uncertain whether you could do something and then discovering that you could. Comfort can give you pleasure. It can give you relief. It can give you the absence of suffering. It can give you entertainment and ease and the sensation of being well taken care of. But it cannot give you aliveness. It cannot give you the deep cellular sense of your own potential being realized. It cannot give you the thing that the extinction spiral has taken from you, because that thing was never found in the absence of difficulty. It was found inside it, in the exact place the comfort is working hardest to prevent you from entering. And the conspiracy of it is this. The comfort that the modern world provides is not neutral. It is not simply pleasant. It is actively, systematically calibrated to make the discomfort of ambition feel unnecessary. The algorithm learns what keeps you engaged, what keeps you comfortable, what keeps you in the chair, and it serves you more of that. Every hour, every day, every year. Every hour you spend in frictionless comfort is an hour your brain spends reinforcing the neural pathway that connects ease to safety and discomfort to threat. Every time you choose the comfortable option, the uncomfortable one becomes slightly harder to choose. Every time the path of least resistance is taken, the path of most resistance becomes a little more daunting. The comfort accumulates. The avoidance deepens, the spiral tightens, and the world hands you the next comfortable thing before the discomfort of the previous choice has had time to register. The bridge stands waiting to be crossed. The gear mechanism sits frozen. The safe stands open with its brilliance untouched inside. The galaxy darkens from the center outward. And the world offers you another program, another meal delivered to your door, another scroll through the lives of others, another comfortable evening in a comfortable home inside the comfortable grip of a spiral that has been fed and nourished by every frictionless convenience you have ever allowed yourself. This is not an argument against comfort. It is an argument for understanding what comfort costs when it becomes the dominant currency of a life. There is a version of comfort that is earned and deserved and genuinely restoring. The rest that comes after sustained effort, the ease that comes after genuine difficulty, the peace that is purchased with real struggle, that comfort is valuable. That comfort feeds the hunger rather than extinguishing it. But the comfort that arrives before the effort, the comfort that replaces the effort, the comfort that the modern world delivers endlessly and immediately and without requiring anything in return except your continued presence in the chair. That comfort is the spiral's most powerful ally. And it has been sitting beside you, comfortable and familiar, for every single day of this. It is not only the designed environment that conspires with the spiral, it is the people around you. And this part is harder to hear than anything that came before it, because the environment can be changed with enough awareness and intention. But the people who hold you in the spiral are the people you love, the people you trust, the people whose presence makes your life feel less lonely and whose opinions have mattered to you for years. Human beings are social creatures in the most fundamental sense. We do not simply prefer the company of others. We regulate ourselves against them. We take our cues about what is normal, acceptable, possible, and sane from the community we are embedded in. And when the community is caught in various stages of the extinction spiral, as most communities in most social circles are, their presence actively reinforces your own stagnation. Not through malice, through normalcy. When the people around you have stopped building, stopping yourself feels like belonging. When the people around you have accepted the distance between the lives they imagined and the lives they are actually living. Accepting your own version of that distance feels like solidarity. When the people around you use the language of contentment and maturity to describe their stagnation, using it yourself feels like finding your tribe. And the social reinforcement runs deeper than simple mirroring. There is an active social cost to breaking out of the spiral while those around you remain in it. Because ambition, when it is genuine and sustained, makes the people around you uncomfortable. Your consistent effort is an implicit comment on their consistent avoidance. Your commitment to growth is a mirror that reflects their stagnation back at them. And people do not typically respond to mirrors with gratitude. They respond with the subtle social pressure of skepticism. Who do you think you are? Why can you not just be happy with what you have? You are taking life too seriously. You are making things harder than they need to be. You were always like this. Why do you always need to be doing something? Can you not just relax and be here with us? Not because they want to harm you, because they need you to stay where they are. Because your refusal to accept the spiral as the natural destination of a mature adult life is a challenge to the story they have told themselves about why they have accepted it. And the story they have told themselves is the thing they are protecting, not you. The story. And so they discourage, subtly, consistently, with love, often, with genuine concern for your well-being sometimes, but always in the direction of the spiral, always in the direction of staying still, always with the implicit message that the comfortable life is the wise one, and the reaching life is the naive one, and growing up means learning to want what you already have. This is why escaping the extinction spiral often requires changing not just your behavior, but your environment. Not abandoning the people you love, but finding additional people who are moving, who are building, who experience discomfort not as a threat, but as the substance of a life being lived at its full dimension, who will not require you to be smaller in order for them to feel comfortable, who will hold you to the size you are actually capable of, rather than the size that is convenient for their narrative. The figure surrounded by its own vast shadow cannot see the shadow because it is always directly behind it. The moth orbits the flame, but the orbit has been set by a gravity it did not choose. The strings attached to the figure in every direction are not chains. They are threads, social threads, and threads can be loosened, but only if you first see them clearly enough to know they are there. We have spent a long time describing the spiral in its phases: the initiation, the avoidance circuit, the reframing, the identity replacement, the social reinforcement. But we have not yet fully described the end point, the place where the spiral has done all the work it intends to do. And what remains is what remains. Full extinction. Let us look at it directly. It does not look like depression. It does not look like failure. It does not look like the wreckage of a life gone wrong or the visible suffering of someone who tried and lost. It looks like nothing in particular. It looks like Tuesday. Like the same Tuesday as every other Tuesday for the past several years. Like a life so thoroughly averaged into routine that the days have become interchangeable, and the interchangeability has been called stability, and the stability has been called success, and the success has been called enough. A person in their 40s or 50s, comfortable, stable, pleasant to be around. They have a home with things in it they have owned long enough not to notice anymore. They have a schedule that provides enough structure to feel purposeful without requiring anything new to be risked. They have pleasures, television, good food, the occasional trip, the reliable comfort of familiar things done in familiar ways at familiar times, a life that functions, a life that, on the checklist of observable outcomes, passes every test. But look at the texture of the days, not the facts of the days. The texture, the quality of attention, the quality of presence. How alive does this person feel inside the life they are living? Not how fine are they. How alive. When did they last surprise themselves? When did they last do something that required them to reach past the known edges of their capacity and discover something they did not know was there? When did they last feel the specific and irreplaceable sensation of becoming, of being in genuine motion toward a version of themselves that was larger than the current one? When did they last feel that? If the answer involves looking back several years to find the last example, the extinction is advanced. If the answer produces a specific memory but not a current experience, the spiral has been running longer than any of the comfortable explanations have acknowledged. The person living in full extinction is not calling out for help, not visibly, not in a way that demands response. They are fine. They will tell you they are fine. They will tell themselves they are fine. And the fineness is real in every observable sense. The cage door is open, and they sit inside. The light switch is within reach, and the finger almost touches it and stops. The ripple expands outward from the still center, and the center remains still. And the fine life continues, day by identical day, in the comfortable grip of the most sophisticated trap that has ever been set for a human being. The trap that requires no bars, because the bars are made of comfort. The trap that requires no lock, because the door of readiness that would open it is perpetually just slightly not yet reached. The trap that requires no guard, because the brain itself is the guard, running its ancient programming in a modern world with extraordinary and devastating efficiency. This is full extinction. This is the end point. Not dramatic, not visible, not something anyone can point to. Just a life that could have been extraordinary and was not. A fire that could have burned and was slowly, patiently, gently extinguished by 1,000 comfortable choices that each made perfect sense in isolation, and together made a prison so complete and so comfortable that most of its occupants would argue they are not in one at all. There is a moment, not a dramatic one, not a moment that anyone around you would notice or that the world would mark in any particular way. An ordinary moment, a quiet one, a moment that can happen at any age, in any circumstance, in any degree of the spiral. A moment when the honest part of you, the part that the spiral has been working to silence for months or years or decades, finally speaks loudly enough to be heard above the noise of the routine. The moment of recognition. It does not feel like enlightenment. It does not feel like the arrival of clarity or the sudden dissolving of confusion. It feels like discomfort, like a low, spreading discomfort with no specific source. A restlessness that does not respond to the usual remedies. A quiet that persists past the end of the distraction. A question that surfaces in the unexpected quiet of a night or a morning or an unoccupied hour and refuses to be deflected. The question sounds something like, what am I actually doing with this? Not an accusatory question, not a self-punishing one, just the genuine, quiet, slightly urgent question that arises when the honest accounting begins. What has the last year produced? What has actually changed in me in the last 3 years? What am I building right now? Not planning to build, not thinking about building. Building. Right now. Today. This week. And if the answer is nothing, the recognition arrives. And the recognition is uncomfortable in a way that is completely unlike the comfortable numbness of the extinction spiral. The numbness was warm. The recognition is cold. The numbness was familiar. The recognition is jarring. The numbness required nothing. The recognition demands everything. Because the recognition is not only the awareness that the spiral has been running, it is the awareness of what the spiral has cost, of the years that passed inside the comfortable life, of the version of yourself that was being built somewhere in those years in an alternative where you had started when you intended to start instead of waiting. Of the things that were possible in the window before the window closed that are simply no longer possible now. That accounting is painful. The heart under its frost. The pendulum at its narrowest arc. The translucent figure beside the solid one. The two versions of the same person, one slightly smaller than the other, standing in the darkness that has accumulated around them while they were comfortable. That accounting is the beginning of genuine honesty about what has happened. And genuine honesty about what has happened is the only soil in which anything real can grow. Do not rush past this part. Do not convert the recognition immediately into a plan. Do not reach for the motivational narrative that lets you feel like the problem is already solved simply because you have identified it. The identification is not the solution. Awareness of the spiral is not escape from the spiral. The spiral has survived the awareness of many people who understood it completely and continued to be held by it regardless. Sit with the recognition. Let it have the weight it deserves. Let it be as uncomfortable as it is. Let it show you the full landscape of what has been accumulated by the years of fine, the empty canvas, the blank notebook, the open cage, the unused key beside its open lock. Let all of it be fully present before you reach for anything. Because what comes after the recognition is not comfortable. And the only way to sustain what comes after is to have let the discomfort of the recognition do its full work first. To have allowed yourself to feel, honestly, and without the usual protections, the cost of what the spiral has taken. Not to punish yourself with it, not to collapse into it, but to let it be real enough and present enough and heavy enough to outweigh the comfort that will keep trying to pull you back. After the recognition comes the audit, and the audit is specific, not general, not philosophical, not the kind of reflective exercise that produces beautiful insights that change nothing. Specific, named, honest in a way that uses actual language rather than euphemism. The honest audit of the territory the spiral has claimed. What was I building 5 years ago that I am not building today? Not the vague ambitions, not the general desires, the specific projects, the specific commitments, the specific versions of yourself you were in active pursuit of that you have since quietly allowed to become inactive. Name them. Not in your head where they can be softened and hedged and surrounded by context. On paper where they become real. The book that has not been added to in 4 years. Named. The business that existed as a detailed plan and never as an actual thing. Named. The skill that was being developed with genuine seriousness and then was not. Named. The relationship that deserved more of your real self than it received, because giving your real self required the kind of vulnerability that the spiral had been protecting you from. Named. The body that was being built and was then abandoned to the comfort that the modern world makes so effortlessly available. Named. The creative practice that was producing something and was then put down and told it would be picked up when there was more time, and was never picked up because there was never more time, because the time that exists is always occupied by the comfortable things that do not require anything. Named. Name them all, not to judge them, not to grieve them, to see them, to hold them clearly in your awareness without the protective layer of explanation and justification and reframing that the spiral has been providing. Just the actual accounting. Just the actual list of what was alive in you and what you did with it and where it is now. And then ask the harder question, what have I been telling myself about why? Listen to the answer carefully, because the answer will tell you which phase of the spiral you are in and how deeply it has progressed. If the answer sounds like wisdom, if it sounds like growth and perspective, and the mature acceptance of life's complexity and your own limitations, listen even more carefully, because that is the reframing. That is the spiral's most sophisticated voice, and it will sound exactly like the truth. It will sound exactly like something a thoughtful, self-aware, psychologically sophisticated person would say. The test is not in how it sounds. The test is in what it produces. Genuine wisdom produces better action, more clarity, more alignment between values and behavior, a life that is being lived more fully and more intentionally than before. The wisdom arrived. The spiral's imitation of wisdom produces stagnation dressed in eloquent justification, beautiful thoughts and unchanged days, sophisticated self-understanding and identical weeks, insightful explanations for why the fire is so small and no wood added to it. Look at the days, not the ideas. The days. What did you do yesterday that the spiral did not endorse? What did you do this week that required you to move against the pull of the comfortable and the familiar and the safe? What is the evidence in behavior rather than intention that you are building something? If there is no evidence, the audit is complete. And the question that follows the completed audit is the only one that has ever mattered. Not why did this happen, not whose fault is it, not how did I let it get this far. What do I do today? And now we arrive at the part that every previous section has been building toward. The practical part. The part that transforms understanding from a comfortable intellectual experience into something that actually changes the shape of the days. How do you interrupt a spiral you cannot feel? The first answer is the most important and the most counterintuitive. You do not think your way out of this. You cannot. The spiral does not live in your cognition. It lives in your behavior and in the neural pathways that behavior has carved over months and years of repetition. You can understand every word of this conversation with perfect clarity and still find the avoidance response firing the next time ambition appears. Understanding is necessary, but understanding is only the beginning. The spiral does not surrender to comprehension. It surrenders only to action. Consistent, sustained, repeated action against the avoidance response. There is no other key. The second answer is equally important and equally counterintuitive. The action required is smaller than you believe. Much smaller. Absurdly small. In fact, the smaller it is, the more effective it will be in the beginning. Because the spiral has a defense against large action. When you decide in a moment of clarity and motivation that you are going to change everything, that you are going to return to full commitment from a standing start, that you are going to make up for lost time with a comprehensive and total transformation of your behavior, the avoidance response meets you with everything it has. The fear of such total commitment is overwhelming. The gap between where you are and where you are trying to go is so vast that the impossibility of crossing it becomes itself a reason to stop. And you retreat. And the retreat is more reinforcing than any previous retreat, because now you have tried and failed and the spiral has evidence. This is the trap within the interruption. The spiral has learned to masquerade as high standards, to tell you that unless your effort is large enough, and your commitment is total enough, and your readiness is genuine enough, it does not count. That small action is not worth doing. That if you are serious, you will do it properly or not at all. And since properly always requires just slightly more than what is currently available, not at all is always the outcome. Lower the bar until the spiral cannot find a convincing argument against it. Make the action so obviously possible that your brain cannot manufacture a genuine objection. One sentence, one paragraph, one set of repetitions, one email drafted, 1 hour of focused attention on the thing that has been postponed. Not because 1 hour changes everything, but because 1 hour changes one data point in a data set that has been recording only avoidance. and data points accumulate. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. A new circuit begins to exist alongside the old one. The path materializes beneath your feet only where you step. Behind you, it is solid and clear. Ahead of you, it is only darkness until the next step is taken. You cannot see the full path before you walk it. You will never see the full path before you walk it. The spiral has been using that fact against you for years, telling you to wait until the path is visible before you step onto it. The path does not work that way. It never did. It appears under your feet and nowhere else. And the step into the dark, where the next piece of path has not yet materialized, is the step the spiral will resist most ferociously because it is the step that breaks the circuit. Take it anyway. The third answer to how to interrupt the spiral is the one that sustains the interruption after the initial motivation fades. Identity work. Not motivational affirmations, not inspirational reading. Identity work. The deliberate, specific behavioral claiming of an identity that the spiral has been replacing for years. You must decide, not aspire, not plan, decide that you are someone who is building something. Present tense, active, current. Not someone who was building, not someone who wants to build, someone who is. And that identity must not wait to feel true before it is acted from. You must act from it while it feels false, while it feels forced. While the spiral tells you that this performance of ambition is not authentic and that your real self is the comfortable one and that you are pretending to be something you have outgrown. The spiral is lying. It had been lying for years. The identity it installed is not your real self. It is your survival self. The smaller, safer, more energy-efficient version of you that the brain constructed to protect you from the metabolic cost of ambition. Your real self is the one with the fire, the one that was building, the one the spiral interrupted. That self does not need to be found. It needs to be returned to. And the return happens through behavior, not through feeling. You act like the person who is building, and the feeling of being that person follows. Not immediately, not easily, but follows. The seedling breaks through the dark earth. The crack of light opens through the body. The path appears. The chain breaks. The figure rises from the floor. One movement, one data point. One action taken in the presence of the full resistance of the avoidance response, and then another, and then the next day another. And slowly, against the pull of everything the spiral has built, the new circuit strengthens, and the old one begins to face something it has not faced before. Competition. The return is not what you imagine it will be. It is not the experience of finally feeling ready, finally having clarity, finally being certain that the time is right and the conditions are optimal and the version of yourself that should be doing this work is fully present and fully capable. The return does not feel like that. The return never feels like that. Because the spiral has ensured that readiness will perpetually remain just slightly beyond reach. It has built the avoidance response too deeply and calibrated the threat detection system too precisely. It will always find a reason to wait, always construct a case for one more day of preparation, always identify something that needs to be resolved before the real work can begin. The return happens before readiness. It happens before certainty. It happens before the fear has gone, or the conditions have improved, or the window feels undeniably right. It happens when you choose, in the full presence of all the discomfort and uncertainty, and the weight of the years that have already passed, to move anyway. Not because you are ready, because you have understood that readiness is a concept the spiral invented to keep you still. Not because the timing is right, because you have finally accepted that the timing will never be right, and every day you spend waiting for it is a day you give entirely to the spiral. Not because you are certain you will succeed, because you have understood that the visible, uncomfortable, instructive failure of genuine effort is better than the invisible, painless, catastrophic failure of never trying at all. And it will not feel like triumph at first. The return rarely does. It will feel small and slightly false, and not enough. The first actions will feel inadequate to the scale of what needs to be undone. One sentence does not undo 4 years of silence. One day of genuine effort does not reverse years of avoidance. The gap between where you are and where you were supposed to be will still be visible. Perhaps more visible now than before, because you're actually looking at it rather than away from it. Let it be visible. Let the gap be exactly as large as it is. Do not look away from it, and do not collapse into it. Stand in front of it honestly, and do the next small thing that moves toward the other side of it. And then do the next thing after that. The figure pushes against the dark wall. The wall does not move. The figure pushes anyway. The fire in the open chest reaches outward into the surrounding darkness for the first time. The figure walks toward the light, with no guarantee that the light will grow. The ascending staircase disappears into darkness, but the climbing continues. The path appears one step at a time, and the next step is taken before the path has appeared. This is the return, unglamorous, uncertain, not supported by the feeling of conviction that the motivational narrative promises. Simply, the daily practice of doing the next small thing in the right direction against the pull of everything comfortable. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, somewhere in the ordinary days of the return, between the setbacks and the slow progress and the moments when the spiral speaks and the moments when you act anyway, something shifts. Not everything, not all at once, not in a way that would make a good story for a highlight reel, just something essential, something that feels, after all of this time, achingly familiar. The sensation of genuine engagement with the actual life you are living rather than the imagined one you have been sustaining in your head. The specific quality of attention that comes from doing real work in service of a real thing that matters. The feeling of your own capacity being used rather than stored. Of your fire burning outward rather than inward. The hunger comes back, not roaring, not overwhelming, not the naive, undaunted hunger of before the spiral. This is a different kind. Quieter, steadier, more durable. The hunger of someone who has seen the spiral clearly and chosen to move against it with full awareness of what they are moving against. The hunger that has survived the reframing and the identity replacement and the social pressure and the comfort conspiracy and the biological weight of years of accumulated avoidance. The hunger that was there under all of it. That never fully died. That was waiting with infinite patience for exactly this. For the moment you started moving. The rebuilding is not a single event. It is not a transformation. It is not a before and after. It is a practice, a daily, unglamorous, consistent practice of choosing the more difficult option over the more comfortable one often enough and for long enough that the neural circuit of avoidance begins to lose its dominance over the neural circuit of action. This is how the brain actually changes. Not through insight, not through inspiration, not through the perfect motivational speech delivered at the perfect moment, through repetition, through the boring, necessary, unsexy accumulation of behavioral data points that gradually shift the balance between two competing neural pathways. The old pathway is deep and well-worn and fast. The new one is thin and fragile and slow. The old pathway has years of reinforcement behind it. The new one has days. And for a long time, the old pathway will win most of the time. This is not failure. This is neuroscience. The figure runs for the first time in this series. The motion is genuine forward velocity. The darkness ahead has not cleared. The destination is not visible. But the running is happening, and the running is real, and the running is carving a pathway in the brain that was not there before the first step was taken. And every subsequent run deepens it. And every deepening makes the next run slightly easier than the last. And the old pathway, deprived of its daily reinforcement, begins slowly and incrementally to thin. The brain, with all neurons firing, is not the result of a single day of good choices. It is the accumulated result of enough days of good choices to begin reversing the years of dormancy. It takes time, more time than feels fair, more time than the motivational narrative suggests it should. But the time passes regardless of whether you are building something or not. The question is only what the days are being used for. The ascending spiral, wider at the top, growing outward rather than contracting inward. This is the directionality of the return, not triumphant, not dramatic, just consistently and persistently moving in the right direction despite the resistance. The staircase with light at the top, the bottom steps in shadow, the upper steps increasingly illuminated, not because the darkness suddenly lifted, but because the climbing moved the climber into a different relationship to the light that was always there. The light did not come to the figure. The figure walked toward the light, through the shadow, one step at a time. The tree with buds returning to its previously bare branches. The buds are small. They are not fruit. They are not full leaves. They are the first visible evidence of life, returning to something that appeared dead. The appearance of death was not death. It was dormancy. And dormancy can be reversed by exactly this, by the return of conditions that allow growth, by the choice to begin feeding the fire again rather than waiting for the fire to feed itself. The full star field visible above the figure that was looking downward at the beginning of this entire journey. The stars were always there. The darkness was always punctuated with them. But the looking downward prevented their presence from being felt. The change is not in the stars. It is in the direction of the gaze. It is in the choice made every day to look toward what is possible rather than toward what is comfortable. To face the fire rather than the ease. To be the person in motion toward something rather than the person who has learned to be comfortable with the absence of motion. This is not inspiration. This is practice, daily practice, uncomfortable practice. Practice that will sometimes fail and sometimes succeed and will always be more difficult than the spiral makes the alternative look. But practice that over time, over the accumulation of days and weeks and months of choosing the more difficult direction, begins to produce something the comfortable life never could. Proof The behavioral, lived, experiential proof that you are not the extinguished person the spiral told you that you were, that the fire was covered, not dead, that the identity the spiral installed was installed on top of something that was there first and is still there and has been waiting with extraordinary patience for you to return to it. The proof arrives not as a feeling, but as a fact. The fact of the work done, the fact of the pages written, the fact of the thing built, or the skill developed, or the relationship deepened, or the body transformed, or the life expanded. The concrete, undeniable, spiral-resistant fact of what you did when the avoidance response fired and you acted anyway. That fact is yours. The spiral cannot reframe it. The comfortable life cannot replace it. The social pressure cannot diminish it. It is simply, completely, irreducibly real. And real things, accumulated over time, become a life. A different kind of life than the comfortable one. A harder one. An uncertain one. One that requires more of you than the comfortable option ever did. And one that feels unmistakably and irreplaceably like the one you were actually here to live. Here is what action leaves behind that dreaming never can. It leaves footprints, a single fresh footprint in the center of an infinite dark surface. Not a path yet, not a trail, a single print. The evidence of a single step taken, undeniable in its simplicity, indifferent to the enormity of the darkness around it. A step was taken, the ground held, the foot found the floor, the movement was real, and then another print beside it, and another, and the prints accumulate into a trail, and the trail becomes the evidence of a life in motion. Not a complete life, not a finished life, not the life that will one day be looked back on as the one that fulfilled every potential. Just a life that is moving, that is leaving marks as it goes, that is building something with each day rather than simply inhabiting each day. The flame moves forward with a trail of light behind it, showing where it has traveled. Look at this image carefully. The flame does not know where it is going. The darkness ahead of it has not cleared. The destination is still invisible. But behind it, stretching back through the darkness it has already passed through, is a glowing trail, the evidence of the journey, the proof of the movement, the undeniable record of a fire that kept burning through every darkness it entered, rather than waiting at the edge of the dark for the dark to become light. The figure seen from above, walking forward, the path appearing beneath each step. From above, the movement is unmistakable. From the ground level, it might feel uncertain, might feel like each step is a risk, might feel like the darkness ahead is too vast and the path too fragile and the progress too slow. But from above, the direction is clear. The movement is real. The steps are accumulating. The life is going somewhere. The hand pointing into the darkness with direction and commitment. This is not the hesitant reaching of the early images. This is a direction chosen, a commitment made. The darkness has not cleared, and the hand points into it anyway. This is what choosing feels like after the spiral. Not confidence, not certainty, not the absence of fear. Just the decision. Just the direction set. Just the commitment to the next action regardless of the outcome of the one after it. And the first light of dawn at the horizon. Not full light, not the sun risen and the world illuminated, a single point of light at the exact center of a dark horizon, the very first suggestion that the darkness has an edge, that the edge is the beginning of something rather than the end of everything. That the night, however long and however complete, has always had a limit. That limit is not found by waiting for the light to arrive. It is found by walking toward the horizon with enough consistency that the distance to the first point of light decreases, one step at a time, against the spiral, against the comfort, against the avoidance response that will fire every single morning and must be answered every single morning with the same small, simple, radical act. The act of beginning. Again, let everything you have heard tonight settle now. Do not rush to act on it. Not in this moment. Not in the charged, emotionally heightened state that honest recognition sometimes produces. The action that lasts is not born from the dramatic resolution of a single listening. It is born from the quiet, daily, morning by morning choice to be the person who moves rather than the person who waits. But let tonight be different from the other nights. Let tonight be the last night of the stillness that has been accumulating for however long it has been accumulating. Not because everything will be different tomorrow. Because one thing will be different tomorrow. Because you will do one thing tomorrow that the spiral would prefer you did not do. One small, specific, undeniable thing. Not the whole return. Not the complete transformation. Just the next step of the path that will only appear when you step onto it. The moon rises over the darkness that has been complete throughout this entire conversation, large and present and shedding broad, soft light over a world that needed it. The moonlight does not remove the darkness. The void is still vast. The stars still burn in their scattered quiet above. But something has changed in the quality of the dark. Something that was entirely black is now illuminated. Not by the sun, not by some dramatic arrival of full clarity, by the patient, consistent, faithful rising of something that has been rising through its own rhythm, regardless of whether you were watching. Your hunger is like that. It has been rising through its own rhythm, regardless of whether you have been facing it. It has not died. It has not given up. It has been waiting with the patience of something that knows it belongs to you and cannot be fully taken away no matter how long the spiral runs. And all it has ever needed was the direction of your attention, the choice to face it rather than away from it, the willingness to let it show you where it still lives and what it still wants, and who it still believes you are capable of becoming. The figure walks into the darkness with the light ahead, small, but present, and growing. The back is to us. The destination is invisible. The path is uncertain. But the walking is happening, and the figure is moving, and the light ahead is real, and the distance to it decreases with every step taken toward it. That figure is you, not the comfortable, settled, fine version that the spiral has been constructing for years. The real you, the one with the fire that was covered but not extinguished, the one who knows, in the quiet places that the spiral has never fully reached, that there is a distance between the life being lived and the life that was possible, and who is choosing tonight to begin closing that distance, one step, into the dark, without waiting for the light to arrive first. The seedling grows in the darkness with a circle of light following it from above, knowing exactly where the growth is occurring. The light follows the growth, not the other way around. The clarity follows the action. The certainty follows the commitment. The readiness follows the beginning. Not one of these things precedes it. The fire burns in the open chest outward for the first time, illuminating the space around the figure that has been dark for so long. The inner fire has become external light, not because the fire grew, because the chest finally opened, because the containment finally released, because the choice to stop holding the fire inside was finally made. And the fire that was always there, that was always burning, that was always waiting to illuminate more than just the interior of the person who carried it, finally has the space to do what it was always capable of. And finally, the last image of this entire conversation, a single candle flame, small, perfect, steady, alone in a vast black void. The darkness around it is immense and unchanged. The void is as large as it has ever been. Nothing about the difficulty of being a small flame in an enormous darkness has been resolved. Nothing about the vast space between where this flame is and where it might one day illuminate has been closed. But the flame burns, consistent, present, continuing, unmoved by the darkness, not asking the darkness to become smaller before it agrees to burn, not waiting for the conditions to improve before it agrees to give light, simply burning in the darkness, as it has always been capable of burning, as it will continue to burn as long as it is fed. You are that flame, not the darkness, not the void, the flame, the small, real, alive, patient flame that has been burning inside you through every phase of the spiral and every year of the comfortable life and every comfortable excuse and every reframed justification and every social pressure and every morning when the avoidance response fired and won. It has been burning through all of it. It is burning right now. And it will be burning tomorrow morning when the ordinary day begins again with all its ordinary reasons to stay exactly where you are. Let it burn outward then. Let it finally, after all of this time, burn outward. Begin, not tomorrow. Now.